Heartwarming shocker, poor girl helps old man, but what happens next will leave you stunned. In the bustling town of Willow Creek, the air crackled with an energy that felt almost alive, as if secrets were woven into the very fabric of the walls. It was in this quaint place that 12-year-old Ruby Thompson, with her unruly chestnut curls and eyes that sparkled with curiosity, found herself caught in an extraordinary moment. One fateful afternoon, she stumbled upon Mr. Jenkins, the reclusive old man who lived at the end of Maple Street. His presence was a curious blend of frailty and mystery. He wore a tattered hat that seemed to swallow his head, and a long, weathered coat that looked like it had seen more storms than sunshine. As Ruby approached, she noticed something glint beneath a pile of leaves, something silver and slick. Her heart raced. Was it treasure? She knelt by the old man, her palms pressed against the damp earth, eyes wide with anticipation. For a split second, time froze. The world around her faded, leaving only the sound of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. "Don't touch that." Mr. Jenkins's voice cracked like a whip, sending a shiver down her spine. His eyes flared with a wild intensity that spoke of untold stories and buried secrets. Suddenly, the air felt thicker, charged with an electric tension, and Ruby felt a lump rise in her throat. What did he know that she didn't? Then, as if compelled by some unseen force, he beckoned her closer, whispering with a voice softer than the autumn breeze. "They're looking for it, Ruby. You need to understand." His words hung in the air like heavy clouds threatening a storm, but before she could respond, a distant siren wailed, slicing through the murmur of the town. Mr. Jenkins's eyes darted around, fear etched across his wrinkled face. The palpable dread loomed like dark shadows over them. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." The siren faded, but Ruby's stomach knotted. Why did it feel like the world was closing in? Did this old man know something about the mysterious disappearances that had spooked the town? Her heart raced with both fear and the spark of adventure. The town had whispered for weeks about shadows lurking in the darkness, about things that simply vanished without a trace. Ruby needed answers. She needed to know why Mr. Jenkins looked so afraid. "Mr. Jenkins," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what are you hiding?" As she edged closer, his gaze bore into her soul, telling her that the truth was far stranger than she could imagine. And in that very moment, Ruby knew her life was about to change forever. What secrets lay behind those haunted eyes? What darkness had he encountered that made him tremble? The mystery clawed at her, pulling her deeper into a web she never wanted to entangle herself in. Would she dare to uncover what lay beneath the surface of this sleepy little town? Or would she become just another whisper lost in the wind? The shadows beckoned. Ruby's heart pounded in her chest as the old man's trembling hands clenched around the edges of his coat. "Listen to me, Ruby," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just a shiny trinket lying in the dirt. It's something much more dangerous." What could he possibly mean? With her brow furrowing in confusion, she glanced back at the glinting object, barely peeking out from the colorful leaves. The allure of treasure faded, dread settled over her like a heavy blanket. "What do you mean dangerous?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Damar." Jenkins hesitated, the fear in his eyes deepening. "They'll do anything to find it, anything." He stared hard into the distance, as if he glimpsed shadows creeping closer. Ruby followed his gaze, but all she could see was the familiar row of houses lining Maple Street, basking under the orange glow of the setting sun. Just then, a figure emerged from behind a tree, tall and menacing. Ruby's breath caught in her throat as the man stepped into view. He was dressed in dark clothes, the kind that blended into the twilight, and his eyes glinted like steel. A chill ran down Ruby's spine. "Mr. Jenkins," the man called out, his voice smooth yet laced with an edge of something dangerous. "We need to talk." "Run, Ruby!" Mr. Jenkins shouted, his voice stronger now, filled with urgency. "Get out of here!" Panic ignited, and Ruby turned on her heels, sprinting back toward the path that led to her home. Leaves crunched beneath her feet, but the sound was drowned out by her racing heartbeat. In her mind, she recalled whispered tales of disappearances, the townsfolk speaking in hushed tones, their brows furrowed in concern. What if one of those missing was connected to this? As she dashed down the street, she risked a glance behind her. The dark figure had taken a few steps toward Mr. Jenkins but stopped, his gaze locked onto Ruby's fleeing silhouette. He seemed to calculate, deciding something within that split second. The dread surged again. This was no ordinary chase. A suffocating sense of urgency burned inside Ruby. She had to warn the townspeople. Reach her home. But what could she say? Breathless, she stumbled into her house, slamming the door behind her. The familiar smell of fresh cookies filled the kitchen, but it did little to soothe her racing mind. Her mother called from the other room, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. Ruby's thoughts whirled. Mr. Jenkins, that man, the object hidden in the leaves. What did they all mean? Before she could gather her thoughts, she peeked through the curtains. The streetlights flickered on, casting shadows that danced like specters along the pavement. The dark figure was now at the old man's house, standing still, surveying the area with an unsettling calm. Then he turned, his eyes locking onto Ruby's, and she felt a jolt of electricity shoot through her, freezing her at the window. He raised a hand, pointing directly at her, a smirk spreading across his face. And just like that, her heart plummeted. Was she now a target? What if he followed her home? Questions spiraled in Ruby's mind. The night was cloaked in more than shadow, it held danger, secrets, and maybe even her next adventure. The danger had come closer than she thought. And what had once appeared as a simple act of kindness had spiraled into a chilling mystery entwined with dark, hidden truths. How far would she need to go to uncover the secrets of Willow Creek? With the man still looming outside, Ruby understood one thing clearly: she could no longer stay safe in her bubble. She had to find out what it was all about. But was she ready to dive into the unknown, knowing the shadows might be watching her every move? The stakes had just skyrocketed. The night deepened, surrounding Ruby in an oppressive darkness. The shadows outside seemed to swell, thickening into something more than just silhouettes. She pressed her back against the cool wall, heart thrumming in her ears, her breath a shallow whisper in the heavy silence. "I need to find out," she murmured to herself, her resolve hardening, like steel being forged in fire. She couldn't let fear dictate her actions. Memories of her mother's warnings echoed in her mind, but the urgency to understand what lay hidden just beneath the surface pushed her forward. Taking a deep breath, Ruby glanced at the clock. Minutes ticked away lazily. She couldn't wait. The dark figure haunted her thoughts. Who was he, and what was so important about that object? Every logical bone in her body screamed to stay put, to call the police, to let the adults handle it. But it was as if something deeper tugged at her, compelling her to unearth the truth. Cautiously, she opened the front door, praying it wouldn't creak. Stepping outside felt surreal. The chill of the night air wrapped around her like the grip of a ghost. Ruby stepped lightly, the leaves crunching softly under her sneakers, the sound barely breaking the silence. Heart racing, she made her way down the steps toward Mr. Jenkins' house, the glow of the streetlights casting eerie patterns on the ground. As she neared the old man's yard, she spotted the dark figure still standing there, his face illuminated for a brief second by the flickering light. It was enough for Ruby to catch the cruel twist of his lips. She shivered, rooted in place, but she couldn't turn back. Just then, a low murmur reached her ears. "We know you have it, Jenkins. Hand it over, and maybe we'll let you live." The smooth voice cut through the tension like a knife. Ruby crouched low behind a hedge, her heart in her throat as she strained to hear more. "He's a kind man, please, just leave him alone." Her voice was a breath, she hadn't meant to speak it out loud. A low chuckle erupted from the man. "Ah, the little girl. What a mistake you've just made." He pivoted, scanning the darkness. Desperation clutched Ruby's chest. She had to act. She had to distract him. With trembling hands, she reached into her pocket and fished out a small rock, feeling its cool weight. Gripping it tightly, she hurled it into the bushes across the yard. The sound startled the figure, who turned sharply, his predatory instincts kicking in. "Who's there?" he growled, advancing toward the bushes where she had thrown the stone. Now was her chance. Ruby darted back, a split-second choice that ignited her survival instinct. She dashed down the narrow alley separating their houses, her pulse pounding in her ears. Each breath felt heavier, suffocating her resolve as raw fear flooded her senses. She paused at the end of the alley, panic coursing through her veins. Where could she go? How could she help Mr. Jenkins while ensuring her safety? The alley opened into a small park lined with tall trees. A dark thought crossed her mind. Could she find a way to outsmart the man stalking her? Then she spotted an old tree house, barely visible through the branches. It was a relic of childhood, but now it looked like a potential sanctuary. With renewed adrenaline, she sprinted toward it, scrambling up the rickety ladder, praying it would hold her weight. As she crouched inside, crouched among dusty old memories and cobwebs, she heard footsteps approaching the park. She held her breath, clinging to the edge of the wooden platform, praying she would remain unseen. "Where are you, Ruby?" The man's voice chimed in, smooth yet menacing. She felt cold dread creep over her once more. The hunt had begun, and she was now the prey. What would happen next? Would she find Mr. Jenkins before it was too late? Or was she caught in a game far more perilous than she ever imagined? Ruby needed answers fast, and time was running out. Ruby crouched in the tree house, heart pounding in her chest. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to run, but the thought of Mr. Jenkins being in danger anchored her in place. She peered through a crack in the wooden slats, praying the darkness would shield her from the prowling figure below. The air was thick with tension. She could see the outline of the man moving under the flickering street lamp, his silhouette twisting in the shadows. He called out again, his voice dripping with mockery. "Are you playing hide and seek, Ruby? This isn't a game you want to play?" Ruby squeezed her eyes shut, as if shutting out the sight would somehow protect her. The sound of his footsteps neared, crunching on leaves like someone walking on bones. They paused directly beneath her perch. She held her breath, the air sharp and cold in her lungs. What would happen if he looked up? Suddenly, a shrill scream sliced through the night, jolting Ruby from her thoughts. It came from Mr. Jenkins' house. Was he being hurt? Her heart sank as dread rolled over her like a heavy wave. Fear and fury collided inside her, lighting a fire in her chest. She couldn't stay hidden. Not when someone needed help. Taking a deep breath, she slid out of the tree house and dropped lightly onto the ground. The shadows enveloped her as she moved toward the house, a blurred figure of determination fueled by courage. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she pressed on, driven by a desire to save Mr. Jenkins. As she neared his porch, the door slammed open. The man emerged, a wicked grin splitting his face. In the sparse light, Ruby could see the glint of something metallic in his hand. It was a knife. "Still here, Ruby?" he called out, his voice dripping with disdain. Just in time for the finale. Panic washed over her, but she forced herself to stay focused. She spotted a garden gnome beside the porch, chipped but still sturdy. Without thinking, she scooped it up and hurled it at him, a desperate attempt to create a distraction. The gnome shattered against the side of the house, drawing his attention away momentarily. "Hey!" he shouted, spinning around, eyes narrowing. His moment of surprise gave Ruby a fraction of a second. She dashed for the porch, heart racing, calling out, "Mr. Jenkins! Are you okay?" No. Mr. Jenkins' voice wobbled from somewhere inside. Get out of here, Ruby. He's dangerous. But Ruby could only think of the fear laced in his tone. She pushed through the door, her mind whirling. The house was dimly lit, wallpaper peeling like memories of better times. And there he was, cornered in the kitchen, heart hammering like her own. The man stumbled inside after her, rage igniting his features. You shouldn't have done that. He spat, advancing toward them. Ruby felt the weight of the knife he clutched. It glinted ominously, a harbinger of terror. The room shrank around her, walls closing in with the precariousness of the moment. She backed away inch by inch, fear pulsating like a living thing. Stay away from him. Ruby cried out, desperately thinking of anything to keep him from advancing. You don't have to do this. His expression flickered with uncertainty. It was just a moment, but in that fleeting glimpse, Ruby understood. He was human, hidden behind layers of malice. What do you think you know, little girl? He sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. I know you want something. Ruby steadied her breath, desperation giving her strength. You don't need to hurt him. Just tell us what you want. Silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating. In that charged stillness, she tried to see a way out. What if she could reason with him? But what would be the price? The man tightened his grip on the knife, eyes narrowing. You've got guts, kid. But guts won't save you. Just then, the sound of sirens blared in the distance, a glimmer of hope. Police! Ruby cried, the realization hitting her like a splash of cold water. The man's face twisted in fury and panic. No. You're not supposed to be here. With a final surge, he lunged forward. The room erupted into chaos as Ruby dove aside, adrenaline surging through her veins. Would the sirens be enough to save them? Or had she stirred a hornet's nest too dangerous to escape? In that instant, Ruby knew one thing for certain: the night was far from over, and her fight was only just beginning. The room erupted with a chaotic whirl as Ruby launched herself away from the rushing figure, her heart racing like a runaway train. She barely registered the crash of the knife punctuating the air as it sliced through the top of the dining table and lodged into the wood just inches from where she'd been standing. The man's eyes gleamed with frantic rage, desperation mingling with his fury, and Ruby could see his plan slipping like sand through his fingers. Get out of here! Mr. Jenkins yelled, his voice strained, laced with fear and urgency. He moved slightly, trying to position himself between the man and Ruby, despite the apparent danger. You have to know. Ruby cried, limbs trembling with adrenaline. She couldn't let him take the only person who had ever believed in her, the one who treated her like more than just a girl from down the street. We can't just leave you here. Another loud crash echoed as the man jerked the knife free, his nostrils flaring, fury morphing into something tighter, more dangerous. You're both going to regret this. He spat, advancing with sheer intent, but the sound of police sirens grew louder, more insistent. Then, suddenly, panic lit his features as he caught a glimpse of flashing lights through the window. His grip relaxed for a mere second, but in that space of hesitation, Ruby seized her chance. Mr. Jenkins, the basement! She shouted, pointing fervently toward the darkened staircase. He nodded sharply, understanding the urgency behind her words. It was a plan, no time for hesitation. They bolted toward the basement door, rushing past the man, who was momentarily distracted by the approaching sirens. Ruby could feel her heartbeat echoing in her ears, threatening to drown out all rational thought, but the escape was almost too smooth. Just as they reached the door, the man whipped back around, snarling like a dog defending its territory. You think you can run? Think again. Ruby lunged ahead, propelling Mr. Jenkins into the basement before shoving the door shut behind them. It slammed with a resonant thud, and she could hear the man's frustrated shout from the other side. He rattled the doorknob, but Ruby pushed her back against the door, her body shaking. Is this door locked? She asked, her voice a fragile whisper. Should be, answered Mr. Jenkins, his breath coming in rapid bursts. We should be safe for now. There was no comfort in the dim light of the basement, the walls closing around them like a cage. Ruby felt claustrophobic as she glanced around, piles of old newspapers and cardboard boxes filled the cramped space. But she couldn't think of that. The reality of their situation loomed larger than the shadows. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed above them, heavy and deliberate. Ruby's blood ran cold. The man was still out there, and he was angry. Ruby, Mr. Jenkins's voice trembled as he clutched her shoulder, his eyes wide with fear. What do we do if he finds us? She couldn't let panic have the upper hand. We wait for the police. They'll come, they have to. But her own voice wavered, betraying her uncertainty. The noise above grew louder, the door rattling as he attempted to force it open. This isn't over. He yelled, taunting them, sending chills up Ruby's spine. You can't hide forever. With each passing moment, dread coiled tighter within her. How long until the police arrived? Would they make it in time? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the house, a sound so violent, it felt like the final breaths of hope. Ruby's heart sank. The man had broken through. What's happening? Mr. Jenkins grasped her tighter, his grip like a lifeline. Stay quiet, Ruby hissed, trying to mask her own fear. From above, she could hear nothing but frantic footsteps and the sudden sound of something heavy hitting the ground, the unmistakable noise of a struggle. Shadows flitted by the basement door, a dark dance of menace and dread. Then came a familiar voice, Ruby. Mr. Jenkins. Are you in there? A wave of relief washed over her, but it was immediately stifled by her racing mind. The police were close, but what was happening above them? Wait! She shouted, scrambling to remain calm, but uncertainty clawed at her gut. Don't come in. But would the sirens, the voices, be enough to truly save them? Or had they walked into a web of danger far greater than they could imagine? Ruby pressed her ear against the cool, wooden door, holding her breath, waiting for the storm to break. The basement felt like a tomb, the air thick and stale as Ruby held her breath against the inevitable chaos that swirled above them. The familiar voice of the police officer was a beacon of hope, but shadows danced in her mind, whispering that hope could be poisonous. Mr. Jenkins gripped her arm tightly, a silent plea in his wide, terrified eyes. Who knows what's happening up there? He muttered, his voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. Ruby could feel tears prick at the corners of her eyes as she thought of the struggle happening above. The very air in her lungs felt heavy, tainted. We have to trust them. They'll figure it out, she said, though a seed of doubt took root in her mind. What if the man got to them first? What if the door rattled violently again, and Ruby's heart pounded in rhythm with the clamor? The man's voice, deep and dripping with malice, was suddenly clear through the thin wood. They can't help you. You're mine now. No. Ruby shouted, breaking her silence, flinging herself against the door. She had to be strong, she had to protect Mr. Jenkins. Ruby, his whisper was fraught with dread, but she steeled herself. The frantic moments stretched into eternity, and the world above seemed to turn into a swirling void of fear and confusion. Then, a crash. The unmistakable sound of something heavy falling echoed down the stairs, making Ruby jump. What was that? She gasped, her heart racing. Stay down. Mr. Jenkins pulled her close, his breath quickening. The sounds overhead shifted from chaos to a sudden, eerie stillness. For a second, everything seemed frozen, like the world held its breath. Just then, the door shuddered again, this time rattling with a determination that horrified Ruby. Footsteps approached, hesitant, but surely drawing closer, as if someone was trying to gauge the situation before making their move. Here's what I want you to do, Ruby began, her voice trembling with urgency. When I say, we need to run. We can't just leave. Mr. Jenkins protested, fear glimmering in his eyes. We have to if he breaks in. Trust me. She felt sick but knew there was no time for hesitation, no time for fear to take hold. They had to make it out alive. Suddenly, tilting her ear to the door again, Ruby heard muffled voices. The police were arguing. I don't care what he says. We have to get in there. Ruby's heart raced. They were so close, yet she could feel the darkness creeping back around her. What if they couldn't get through? We can't hang around here, we're sitting ducks. Mr. Jenkins whispered urgently. This guy, he might have a weapon. With determination burning inside her, Ruby grabbed Mr. Jenkins' hand. We're going to make it, I promise. Just trust me, okay? But just as she prepared to shout for them, the door shook violently, splintering the wood at the edges. The man's voice boomed, filled with madness. I see you. There's nowhere to run. Now. Ruby screamed, pulling Mr. Jenkins with her. They bolted toward the dim light of the basement window, a single ray of hope amidst the growing panic. As they reached the small opening, Ruby took a breath to muster her courage, glancing back. The door creaked dangerously, about to collapse under the man's momentum. Get out now. They climbed through the narrow space, and Ruby's heart skipped as she caught sight of the sprawling yard outside. Freedom was just a leap away, but would it be safe? In that fleeting moment, a deafening crash erupted behind them as the basement door splintered apart. Ruby felt the rush of adrenaline surge, driving them forward. But she caught a glimpse of the figure emerging from the shadows, and her heart thudded painfully in her chest. Run. She shouted, but a chill swept through her. Was it too late? The last sight she registered was the man, stalking toward them with rage raging in his eyes, knife glinting under the moonlight. What would happen next? Would they escape this nightmare, or had they fallen into a trap set by terror itself? Ruby's heart raced, and she couldn't shake the feeling that danger was just beginning to unfold. The yard opened up before them like an endless ocean of night, moonlight spilling across the grass in harsh, cold patches. Ruby's breath came in frantic gasps. They were free, yet the terror close behind them gnawed at her heels. She could feel the pulse of her heart thumping loudly in her ears. Go. Over the fence. She urged, dragging Mr. Jenkins toward the wooden barrier at the far edge of the yard. The tall fence felt like a fortress they had to breach, an impossible divide between safety and the encroaching nightmare. Are you sure? What if he's Mr. Jenkins began, but Ruby didn't wait for the end of the sentence. She hoisted herself up, climbing clumsily, each movement punctuated by the mounting sounds of chaos behind them. When she reached the top, she glanced back as Mr. Jenkins followed, and dread washed over her as she saw the silhouette of the man emerging from the basement. He was panting, rage etched in his features, and he was fast, too fast. Come on. Hurry. Ruby cried, her voice cracking with panic. Just as Mr. Jenkins reached the peak of the fence, she felt the ground shudder beneath her, and the man let out a roar of fury that echoed through the air, sending chills down Ruby's spine. With a desperate leap, Mr. Jenkins went for the other side. He landed awkwardly, rolling into the dirt, but he was on his feet in an instant. Ruby swung one leg over the fence, feeling her heart race even faster as she prepared to jump. But fear seized her as she realized the man wasn't far behind. Jump! Mr. Jenkins shouted, extending his hand. As Ruby launched herself down, she felt the impact tear through her legs, pain shooting up her body, but she bit it back. They didn't have the luxury of time. As she stumbled forward, Mr. Jenkins grasped her wrist, yanking her upright. Run! This way! He urged, his voice a trembling guide through the darkness. They darted across the yard, hearts pounding in sync, driven by sheer survival, but just when they thought they had escaped, the chilling sound of footsteps thundering closer made the blood drain from Ruby's face. The man was relentless. Don't look back. She yelled, even though every instinct screamed at her to glance over her shoulder. Fear of what they would see held her firmly ahead, pushing them into the dense woods bordering the yard. The trees loomed like sentinels, their branches weaving together, creating a tangled web of shadows and fears. Ruby could hardly see where they were going, but instinct shoved her forward. She glanced sideways at Mr. Jenkins, his face was pale, eyes wide with terror. She didn't have time to comfort him or even herself. They needed to find a hiding spot, a way to outsmart the beast hunting them. Over there. She pointed to a cluster of bushes, dense and dark. They dove into the foliage, crouching low, breathing heavily, forcing themselves to silence. Ruby could feel her heart pounding like a drum, the sound deafening in her ears. The footsteps drew closer, crunching leaves and snapping twigs. Each sound magnified the dread pooling in Ruby's stomach. "This can't be the end," she murmured to Mr. Jenkins, trying to keep panic at bay. Just as the footsteps paused nearby, an unexpected crack shattered the tension. A gunshot rang out, echoing through the trees, sending a jolt of shock through Ruby. "What was that?" Mr. Jenkins whispered, terror dripping from his voice. "Shoo!" Ruby urged, straining to hear through the crackle of her racing pulse, but then, another voice broke through the chaos, louder and clearer than before. "Get down! We have you surrounded." Ruby's heart sank. They had fallen into a trap, but whose trap was it? The man's voice was now laced with confusion and rage. "You'll regret this. I'm not done yet." With every beat, Ruby felt the world tilt. The real danger was only moments away. Who had come to stop him? Would their salvation turn into further peril? As the standoff in the shadows unfolded, Ruby held her breath, knowing that life as they knew it was about to spiral into an unexpected twist. Ruby squeezed her eyes shut, praying for a way out. Her heart raced, each beat fueled by fear and desperation. The silence felt suffocating, a heavy blanket pressing down as the conflict unraveled not far from where they hid. Mr. Jenkins trembled beside her, his hands gripping the underbrush tightly, knuckles turning white. "What do we do?" he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. "Just stay quiet," Ruby replied, her throat tight. She was acutely aware of every rustle of the leaves, every gust of wind, as if nature itself betrayed their presence. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted behind them, a loud snap of branches shattering the stillness. Ruby's pulse quickened again. Had they been discovered? There was a shift in the air, charged and heavy with tension, as the man's voice boomed through the trees. "You think you can hide? I'll find you, and when I do you'll wish you never ran." The hunter's words sent chills down Ruby's spine, likening him to a wolf prowling the night. They had to escape while they still could, yet moving felt impossible. "Get out of there!" The authoritative voice ordered again, cutting through the sounds of the forest. "You have 10 seconds. Ruby looked at Mr. Jenkins, fear mirrored in his eyes. "We need to move," she urged, fighting the terror knotting her stomach. As she scanned the area, her gaze landed on a narrow path winding deeper into the woods, shrouded in shadow. It was their only option. "This way," she said, not waiting for him to respond. With one last glance over her shoulder, they bolted toward the path, branches snagging their clothes and skin. Ruby's legs burned as she pushed forward, every muscle urging her to go faster. Behind them, the sounds of commotion escalated, shouting mingling with branches snapping underfoot. "Faster!" Mr. Jenkins gasped, his voice growing more panicked. Dread swirled within Ruby. Each pounding step echoed fear, yet she fought to silence the small voice in her head that screamed they could be caught. They turned a bend in the path, and Ruby's heart dropped. Before them lay a rocky clearing, illuminated by scattered moonlight filtering through the trees. No hiding places, no cover. Just open space, vulnerable yet tempting. "Ruby, we can't stop," Mr. Jenkins cried, but her legs felt like lead as they stood at the precipice. "We'll be out in the open," she argued, hardly recognizing her own voice, lined with desperation. "Look." He pointed, and Ruby followed his finger. At the edge of the clearing stood an old shed, weather-beaten and dark. It was not much, but it could offer some refuge. Over there, she urged, and they darted toward the shed, hearts pounding, every creak of wood behind them a reminder of the danger closing in. Inside, they found a small, dusty space stocked with forgotten tools and crumbling boxes. It wasn't safe, not entirely, but it was better than nothing. As they caught their breath, the external terror faded momentarily, replaced by the reality of their situation. What do we do now? Mr. Jenkins murmured, still visibly shaken. Wait it out, Ruby replied, hardly believing in her own words. They had to ride it out, but how long could they stay hidden? A sudden scratching at the shed door sent them into a flurry of panic. Ruby's heart stopped. Had they been found already? She held her breath, her back pressed against the cold wall, and listened hard as the noises outside intensified. But then, out of the cacophony, came another unexpected sound: laughter. Ruby's brow furrowed, confused. It was a sharp contrast to the fear weaving around them. Is it over? Did they get him? Mr. Jenkins whispered, eyes wide. Before Ruby could answer, the door creaked slowly, revealing silhouettes against the backdrop of moonlight. Kids, you should have seen the look on his face. It was a voice she didn't recognize, light-hearted despite the chaos. Who were they? Ruby's breath quickened, a new wave of fear crashing in as she strained to see, uncertainty clawing at her insides. Stay close, she whispered to Mr. Jenkins, her heart pounding with the weight of the unknown. In that moment, her gut twisted, realizing their ordeal wasn't just about escaping the man from the basement. Now, they had stumbled into another layer of uncertainty. As darkness enveloped the shed, a fresh wave of dread washed over Ruby. Who were these people, and what did they want? The door swung wider, and she braced for whatever came next, knowing the real nightmare had only just begun. Ruby's heart raced as the door swung open, the beam of moonlight slicing through the gloom inside the shed. The silhouette stepped forward, revealing a ragtag group of teenagers, laughter lingering like smoke in the air. What's up? You look like you just saw a ghost, the tallest one teased, a mischievous grin stretching over his face. Beside him, a girl with bright blue hair rolled her eyes. Shut up, Leo. They look scared silly. Right, Ruby breathed, but fear still held her tight. We were hiding. There's a man out there. We heard the yelling. Your friend looked like he was in for it. Leo cut in, still grinning. But we handled it, don't worry. We handled it? Mr. Jenkins interrupted, voice trembling. What do you mean? Who are you? Just a couple of kids who like to stir up some action, Leo said, shrugging. Name's Leo, this here is Kira and Sam. We heard him screaming, Kira added, her expression turning serious. You guys shouldn't be out here. It's dangerous. Dangerous? You think? Ruby muttered bitterly as panic bubbled inside her. She had assumed their pursuer was one who was solely focused on them. Now, it appeared his wrath could extend further, scrambling their already fragile sense of security. Relax. Leo laughed, giving the door a firm shove closed, sealing out the jagged noises of the rushing night. We're just messing with him. He doesn't take kindly to us kids running wild in his neck of the woods. Her stomach twisted. You know him? The man outside? Let's just say he's heavy on the get off my lawn vibes, Sam chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. But the laughter did little to chase the shadows away from Ruby's heart. What else do you know? What does he want with us? She pressed, her voice rising slightly as uncertainty clawed at her throat. Leo exchanged glances with Kira, a mischievous light flickering in his eyes. Well, he's got a reputation around here. Creepy old dude. Used to haunt the trails and scare off anyone who dares to tread too close. But he's a danger. You can't just mess with him. Mr. Jenkins exclaimed, his fear boiling over. We've got to get away. Calm down, Grandpa. Leo shot back, annoyance creeping into his tone, but then he softened. Okay, look. Here's the deal. If he can't find you, you're safe. We'll help you through the woods when it's clear. Help us? Ruby scoffed, skepticism flaring. Why would you help us? It's fun, isn't it? Kira chimed in, unsafe thrill lighting her eyes. Besides, we're all in this mess together. You look like you could use some friends. Despite the terror of their situation, the glimmer of hope emerged. Friends, or allies at least. Fine, Ruby said, taking a deep breath. But we need to get out of here soon. They stood in a huddle, discussing their next move, urgency making every word heavier. But as Ruby listened, something outside the shed caught her eye, a shadow, moving just beyond the window. Her breath hitched, panic flooding in once more. Did you hear that? She whispered. Kira's expression changed, mirroring her shock. The other teens halted, the joking demeanor gone. Was that? Sam started, but he didn't finish. We need to be quiet. Ruby urged, dread clawing at her insides, the laughter they had shared just moments ago now feeling far too distant. As they pressed against the walls of the shed, the familiar rush of sound returned, the snapping of branches, a low growl that crawled under their skin, drawing closer. We need to move. Ruby whispered fervently. And as the door shook, the reality hit her, the nightmare was just beginning. What if the hunter had found them after all? Get ready. Leo whispered, his bravado falling away as the doorknob rattled, the shadows growing darker. Would they be able to face whatever came next? Each second stretched taut with uncertainty, and for Ruby, the real terror loomed. A choice had to be made. Stand and fight or take a chance and run. A single thought pierced through, who would betray whom in the depths of the night? The air felt electric as Ruby stood with Mr. Jenkins and the group of teens in the shed, her breath shallow and quick, a stark contrast to the chaos that had led them to this moment. Shadows loomed outside, giving the sensation that danger was merely seconds away. Get ready. Leo urged, the bravado in his voice replaced with a hint of nervousness. He clenched his fists, ready to act, but Ruby felt the weight of the moment hovering over them like storm clouds ready to burst. She could sense the malevolence creeping closer. It was just outside their fragile sanctuary. The door rattled violently, and once again Ruby's heart skipped a beat. Who is it? Kira hissed, eyes wide with fear. What do we do? It's him. Ruby's voice was a mere whisper, laced with mounting dread. She felt adrenaline pumping in her veins, her instincts screaming at her to act. She glanced at Mr. Jenkins, his expression mirrored her own fears. Listen, Ruby said, her voice emerging harder than she felt. If we're going to make it out, we need a plan. Plan? Leo scoffed, but the uncertainty in his eyes betrayed his bravado. We could just wait it out, let him lose interest. Ruby shook her head, the idea swirling into a tempest of frustration. He won T back down. We have to create a distraction and slip out once he's focused on something else. She glanced at Kira and Sam, who were nodding slowly, understanding forming behind their fear. Okay then, Leo said, what's your plan? No hiding, Ruby replied, determination lining her features. We go out together. We create a noise to draw him away, and then we run. But where will we go? Sam's voice trembled. Back to my place, Mr. Jenkins said, grounding them all for a moment. It's safe. Just down the street, but we can only make it if we're quick and quiet. Another rattle of the door. As Ruby leaned close to the window, she caught a glimpse of the figure silhouetted against the moonlight. He moved stalkily, radiating rage, a predator searching for its prey. Now, Ruby said, biting her lip as fear coursed through her. On the count of 3. The group huddled closer, their eyes wide. 1, 2, 3. At that moment, they threw open the door and burst out into the cool night air. The adrenaline surged as they raced towards the edge of the woods. Branches whipped against their clothes, leaves crunched beneath their feet. Over there! Leo shouted, pointing toward a cluster of bushes. They dove into the underbrush, hearts hammering wildly in their chests, but the sounds of chaos followed and pierced through the night. The man's furious voice erupted through the air, echoing their escape. You can't hide forever. I'll find you. Ruby felt a surge of fear rush through her. They had to keep moving. Desperation pushed them deeper into the fray of trees, shadows draping over them like murky water. Stick together. Ruby urged, but the world around them seemed to close in, branches clawing at their arms, thickening the darkness. Go left. Mr. Jenkins shouted, directing them. The urgency in his tone sent a wave of focus through Ruby. Just as they took a sharp turn, they heard the man crash into the trees behind them, branches snapping and leaves rustling violently. I see you. He called, laughter twisted in madness. The dread churned inside Ruby. They had to move faster. They took a narrow path that led toward a familiar stretch of road, their escape point. Almost there. Ruby gasped, the streetlights flickering in the distance, offering the promise of safety. And just then, a piercing scream shattered the air. No! Mr. Jenkins cried, horror washing over his face. That's keep going. Ruby shouted. We can't stop now. She ran with everything she had left. They bolted into the open space, hearts pounding, and the silhouettes of the town rose as their sanctuary. They dashed across the street, heading for Mr. Jenkins' house, the flickering light feeling like salvation. Ruby pulled at the door, and they stumbled inside, catching their breath. Just as she slammed the door shut, the sound of the man's furious shouts filled the air outside. You can't get away. This time. Ruby and Mr. Jenkins stood together, breathing heavily, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. The group of teens huddled close, fear still poised in their eyes, and then, lights flashed outside, illuminating the room as sirens blared in the background. Moments later, the police burst in, their heavy boots echoing against the floorboards. Is everyone okay? An officer barked, scanning the space. Ruby started before Mr. Jenkins intervened, voice shaking. We need help. There's a man hunting us. The officers moved swiftly, issuing calm orders as the chaos began to settle. Soon, Ruby saw a glimpse of the man through the window, silver under the flashing lights. With every second that passed, urgency grew, and she felt the tension melting, letting her breath ease at finally being safe. Then, through the cacophony of voices and the distant drama of arrest outside, Ruby turned to Mr. Jenkins. She could finally process the whirlwind of emotions racing inside her. Relief washed over her, they had made it out. Ruby, he said softly, looking down at her. You were incredibly brave. Thank you. Her heart swelled, warmth radiating within. Yes, they had faced darkness together. Their bond, an unspoken mark of trust, connected them in light. As the adrenaline faded, Ruby felt an aching tiredness but also something more, a new sense of strength. They had taken on fear, faced dangers that nobody should have to face, and come out stronger on the other side. With the police securing the area, Ruby looked around at the ragtag group of teens, each one now a friend linked by the night's events, bonded by shadows and courage. Let us go home, she whispered, ready to step into the warmth of the day ahead, knowing that their stories didn't end here. A new chapter awaited, and a spark of hope filled the air as they walked out into the light, leaving shadows behind. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling ending. Your support is what fuels these adventures.